Hello everyone, my name is Taylor. I wrote my paper on the juvenile justice system as a whole and how it started out and the goals of it and how it's kind of changed a little bit today through a little bit of my law enforcement knowledge behind it as well. The first juvenile court was established in 1899 in Cook County, Illinois. The goal of the system was to get the youth away from the destructive punishments of criminal courts and encourage rehabilitation based on the needs of juveniles. It was to focus on the juvenile in need of guidance and not on the act that was committed. The system started out to be nothing more than a sit-down conversation between the juvenile and a judge, and legal representation was not required. The proceedings were done in a private manner with little information released to the public. Instead of incarcerating juveniles with adults, the court developed a separate system for juveniles to receive probation, rehabilitation, and treatment. This provided the minors with the supervision, guidance, and education they needed, all while being separate from the harsher convicts. Today, juveniles are not housed with adults either because of the same reason. In 1967, the U.S. Supreme Court's decision in the case in Galt determined that the court wasn't upholding the Constitution in their decisions regarding juveniles as though cases against adults were. Youth have the option of furthering their education while incarcerated, along with therapeutic programming. It is important to remember that the United States has at least 51 different juvenile justice systems. Each state has its own laws that govern the juvenile justice system, just as each state has its own laws for adults. The federal government has jurisdiction over small numbers of the juveniles. The process for juveniles is similar to the process for adults. An investigation is done just as an adult's case would be. If evidence is found to be sufficient, the county attorney's office will file charges. If evidence is lacking, the case might get sent back to the officer in hopes that more evidence can be collected. Once a juvenile is detained by a peace officer, a point system is figured up to determine if the juvenile will be detained. If a juvenile does not reach enough points to be incarcerated, the juvenile may be released to a parent or guardian or placed in a shelter care facility. From my experience, juveniles that have less than 10 points get released to their parents, guardians, or a shelter. According to the law, a juvenile must be brought before a judge within 24 to 48 hours for a detention hearing. Most juveniles are not detained, rather they are summoned to court by a mailed notice. Trials are held in front of a judge where the decision is found to be proven or not proven. A judge will then decide if a juvenile will receive a warning, restitution fees, community service, probation, foster care, out-of-home placement, or detention. The judge's decision is based on the juvenile's attitude, the crime committed, the history of the juvenile, and the availability of services for the juvenile. Some other factors that are considered is the expense of incarceration, overcrowding, and research evidence that finds few gains in the terms of recidivism. Juveniles do not have a constitutional right to seek bail. I think that juveniles need to be held accountable for their actions just as adults are. If we continue to let the juveniles commit crimes and go unpunished, the results could end in more serious offenses being committed or incarcerating the juveniles as adults due to the lack of punishment or guidance to better themselves. I am also a firm believer in equal opportunity in schooling and being educated even while incarcerated for adults and for juveniles. If we do not show those behind bars how to better themselves, what is the point in incarcerating them and not showing light on the right path? I also think that every inmate should be assigned to a counselor just as we are in schools. That way you can talk about if you have a troubled past, how to get past that past and how to further better yourself in today's society, because it is rough if you've never had guidance or if you've been incarcerated for a while and you're getting ready to be released. You don't know how to be a civilian in today's world. Well, that concludes my presentation. I hope you all enjoyed and learned a few things.